All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all so much for being here. This is actually our first event in collaboration between eTower and Babson's Entrepreneurial Leadership Village. So before we get started, I'm going to kick it over to DR Witter, Babson's Head of Innovation, for a very brief announcement.
Yeah, just great to have this collaboration. This is the first collaboration we've had. And the Entrepreneurial Leadership Village, for those that don't know, is coming from a gift from the Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation. And when we were putting the proposal together, we started with eTower. We said, what can we do with eTower? In fact, we wrote eTower on the whiteboard, and then we said eTower squared. The Entrepreneurial Leadership Village will be eTower squared. So we're in the design phase, trying to figure out what that means, but it's really inspired by what you've all done in eTower. So great to be here, Jason, and nice to meet you, Craig.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
So my name is Jason Shatsky. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a resident of eTower. eTower is Babson's entrepreneurial living community. We have 21 residents who are all founders of their own startups or working towards becoming one. And we host events almost every week, just like this one. And we're going to put some more information on how you can sign up for eTower updates and our newsletter in the chat. But without waiting any longer, I'm so excited for this event tonight and to introduce Craig Susser, who is the founder of Craig's, one of, if not Los Angeles's most popular and best restaurants, and one of my personal favorite restaurants to visit when I'm in the LA area. So thank you, Craig, for being here, and we are so excited to have you.
Well, thanks. I was really pleased to be asked. And I always say to people, if you make it out of your first year of a restaurant, it's a huge compliment and a success. But I'm gonna probably say after this year, maybe making it out of the 9th year was probably even a bigger trick.
Awesome. Yeah. So I have a couple questions prepared, and then anyone in the audience who has a question, feel free to drop it in the chat at any time. And hopefully we can get to as many of those as possible within the hour that we have together. So Craig, I'd love to start off with learning a little bit more about your background before opening Craig's. I know that you started within the restaurant industry, even as a college student, and kind of worked your way up at another spot called Dantana's. So would love to hear more about kind of that journey, how you developed that passion for the restaurant industry, and kind of context there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I started serving as a way of making money in college, and I kind of did it, for lack of a better term, at some sort of an Olive Garden type place. And I didn't really realize the art of being a good server or what it really took to be in the hospitality business. It was just a way of making money, and I was young and didn't really understand it. And then as I kind of moved around Los Angeles and started to work my way up into better restaurants and finer dining, I realized that service, waiters, bartenders, it was an art form. It was a living. It wasn't something that you did while you were waiting for whatever you aspired to come about. That was the way they made their living. And so I was really lucky to kind of learn from some of the best in the business, some of the best bartenders and servers, and that was their calling. I mean, all over Europe, service is a vocation. So that's kind of really where I got my first inkling that, wow, this isn't really just something you do while you're passing the time. This is something that you can materially impact people's lives. And I think about my own life. If I'm celebrating something, I usually go to my favorite restaurant and want my favorite people serving us. And if I'm upset and commiserating, I want to go to my favorite place and see my favorite people. And you slowly start to realize how big a role a great restaurant and the people that work there can play in somebody's life. And that's kind of where it started. So then I think when I was 22, I got dropped into a place called Dantana's, and they hadn't had a new server or a bartender in, I don't know, 7 years. I was 22. I didn't really know much about serving. I knew how to hold plates. I knew the basics, the mechanics, but I didn't really understand the art of hospitality. And that's where I got my training. And I basically did everything in the front of the house. I was a bartender. I had never been behind a bar in my life. I was a food runner, a server, a captain. I eventually became the maitre d'. I became the general manager. I saw it from all aspects of the front of the house, and I think that's what has given me the ability to run my restaurant successfully, because I know everybody's job and I know all the stresses and pressures and the different particular vision that each role has. And so I'm a little aware of what goes on and what happens in each individual role. So, um, yeah. And then when I was 45, about 11 years ago, decided to open up my own place. And I was lucky enough to have a really institutional following and enough knowledge to kind of make it a go.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'd love to understand a little bit more about kind of what that transition was like from working your way up at that restaurant to eventually deciding to open your own. Was that something that you had been thinking about for a long time? And then also, if you could talk a little bit more about what it was like partnering with your chef and designing the concept and the menu and things like that.
Yeah, I think, 'cause I've alluded to it a couple of times. I don't think anybody in LA is in the service business, wants to be a waiter or a bartender. It's usually a stepping stone in between auditions while you're trying to be an actor. And I was no different. I went to college. I got a communications degree with a business minor, and I was out running around with my friends, going to acting classes and auditions, and that's what I was doing. That's what everybody did in LA, and so the funny thing is I just kind of kept failing upwards in the restaurant business. I mean, I got some acting work, and that's probably why we have such a good celebrity clientele, is because most of them are kind of old friends of mine. We all used to hang out together. Nobody knew that I would own a restaurant. Nobody knew that they'd be a successful actor or director or producer or writer. And we all just kind of were 22 running around town, and I learned how to be a really good bartender, how to be a good waiter. And somebody gave me some really good advice. And they said, listen, I don't know what it is that you want to do with your life, but while you're being a waiter, be a really good one. And I thought, like, that was the greatest piece of advice I'd ever gotten. So at whatever stage you're at and whatever it is you're doing in your life at that moment, be the best you can be, because it'll tend to open doors. Because what I found was the better I got at being a bartender or a waiter, the more interested they became in me, and the more they wanted to know what I was doing with my life and where I was headed. I don't think I ever per se wanted to have my own restaurant. I just kept working my way up the food chain. And then when I became the maitre d', it was kind of like, I kind of liken it to dropping a fish in the water. I don't know why I knew how to do it, but I knew how to see the room. I knew how to see the reservation book. I knew how to see 50 people and 22 tables and know exactly kind of where everything was going. It's kind of like being the ringleader of a circus. You have to see a lot, process a lot of information. And that's where I think as the restaurant grew and became more successful, and I brought maybe a second or a third generation into it was already a mature restaurant, and I kind of brought down the age group, and it gave it another lease on life, kind of. That's when I started thinking, well, maybe it's time for me to think about my own place. Dan and I had come to some sort of an arrangement about me taking over the restaurant, because he was getting to the age where he wanted to kind of bounce out. And we had come to an agreement. And at the very last moment, he decided to sell it to somebody else. And at that moment, it was a really traumatic time in my life, because that was what I had envisioned my future being. And then after working for the new owners for 4 or 5 months, I just realized I knew what I was doing. I knew enough people, and I didn't have to do it for somebody else anymore. And so I started to put together a group of friends and a group of people, and what kind of restaurant did I want to open? Where did I want it to open? And I'm also a big believer that that God puts the right people in your path at the right time. And so I didn't leave Dantana's with any other employees. I don't think if you're going to go out and do your own thing, kind of raping and pillaging the place you're leaving is a good business model. So I left on my own. I didn't take anybody with me. And I found really good people who had the same vision that I did. And and I've talked about this with I don't know, do you know who Michael Voltaggio is? Michael,
I don't know.
yeah, so Michael's on the Food Network, and he's kind of an avant-garde chef, and he really knows how to push the boundaries. He works a lot with like molecular gastronomy, and he really will, if you go to one of his restaurants, he pushes the envelope, and everything he does is spectacular, and he's a great guy. And we've become really, really good friends because we're in the same business, but we see it differently and we don't compete. So I am all about giving you what you want, how you want it, just at a level that you didn't quite expect it at. And Craig's is a hug. It's a good time. It's a great vibe, and it's comfort food at a level you didn't quite expect. Whereas Michael's trying to push you out of your comfort zone and give you an experience. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't always want an experience when I go to a restaurant. I just want to eat good food. I want it to be comforting, and I want to kind of get on with my day because life is tough enough. But every once in a while, I do want something that's experiential and that's different. So there's room for all of those kinds of restaurants. And that's why we get along so well. So I found a chef that understood that, and I'll use the example. I wanted pigs in a blanket on the menu, and that's not exactly, upscale restaurant food. But I said to them, I go, if you make the best pig in a blanket and they can't duplicate it, or it's not what they buy in the frozen food section, then it becomes part of the culture and it becomes part of the experience. And I mean, I'm just using like a really simple example. And so once you get people on your team that understand the philosophy and understand that it's all about hospitality, it's all about a hug, it's all about the experience. Craig's is, for a lack of a better term, is a neighborhood joint. It just happens to be in a really interesting neighborhood with some pretty interesting clientele. But at the end of the day, everybody wants the same thing. They don't want dinner to be difficult. They want it to be delicious, and they want to go on with their day, and they want to go somewhere where they're known and it's personal.
Right, and you mentioned the neighborhood, and what I'm really curious to hear more about is the location of Craig's. For everyone who has been to LA, they know that Melrose Avenue is like the place to be, and so would love to hear more about when you found that location, where in that planning process, and how much you attribute the longstanding success of Craig's to the location that you have.
Well, what's interesting about the location is it's right around the corner from Dan Tana's. So I kind of knew the neighborhood, and I also know my clientele, and I knew that they wouldn't travel as much as they love me and as much as they wanted to support me. They weren't going to travel too far out of their comfort zone. LA is a funny place that way. So I kind of knew where I wanted to go, but Melrose is a really, you're right. It is a great street, and it's kind of where you want to be, but it was not on that end. That end was a little bit of a dead end. And there was a lot of designers, a lot of furniture stores. And so everything closed up around 4:30 or 5 o'clock. So as I was taking some of my investors through the place, they were almost begging me not to use that spot, because not only was it a dead end street, but it had been 3 or 4 restaurants that had failed. And what they saw as negatives, I saw as positives. The fact that it was a quiet part of the street, I thought I could get my more recognizable friends in and out easier. I thought it gave me a little bit of under the radar kind of vibe. And also I just felt that it had great bones, and just because somebody else didn't make it work doesn't mean that I wouldn't be able to make it work, because of my work ethic and because of the 25 or 30 years I had in the restaurant business. What I didn't quite count on, and you got to understand, this is all before really cell phones had cameras and TMZ and all of that stuff. The first 6 months or a year, I think I slipped a lot of people in and out of that restaurant with people not knowing. Then the culture kind of changed, and now everybody's in on the game, and Instagram and Twitter and now even TikTok has changed. There is no sense of privacy in a restaurant. Everybody feels like they have the right to talk about who's in a place, where somebody is. And so it gets harder and harder to kind of protect people that just want to have a nice quiet dinner. It's an upscale problem to have, by sure, by any standard, and I'm well aware of that. And that's also the business they've chosen. So, and that's what comes along with what they do. But yeah, originally people begged me not to open in that location, and it's turned out to be where I opened. I've helped 4 other restaurants open. I wrote letters to the city to help them get open, because I think the more the merrier. All the furniture stores have now turned into restaurants and bars, and now it's kind of one of the busiest areas of Melrose. I just wish I had made a deal with the other landlords, because I think I made their properties a little more valuable, and I didn't see the upside of that.
Right. And you briefly mentioned culture, and one of the things that I find most special about Craig's, not only from having visited Craig's multiple times, but also from seeing you interact with people in the restaurant and on social media and posting pictures, is really this family atmosphere that you've created. So would love to hear if you could speak a little bit more on that, and kind of the culture that you've built within your team, but also the atmosphere within the restaurant.
Yeah. Well, look, like I said, I think it all goes back to being personal. I think the personal touch means a lot. We try not to take anybody for granted. It's hard to do when you're, at full capacity and the place is running and you've got 6 fires to put out all at the same time. Walking by a table without saying hello is hard. But to simplify it, it's kind of a yes culture, right? So I don't particularly like going anywhere where I can't get what I want the way I want it. Now, I'm not looking to destroy the chef's special. That's not what I'm saying. But if I'm in the mood for something specific and I ask the server, this is what I want, and I know that I'm not really putting them out, I don't understand why a lot of people say no. And I get that a lot in restaurants. I get that a lot from servers. And I also, the thing that would turn me off, I try to make, before COVID, I would make reservations at restaurants and I wouldn't tell them who I was, or I'd make it under another name, because I wanted to experience what was going on. And I think the first thing that pops out at me when I walk into a restaurant is just say, hey, it's nice to see you. Glad you're here. The table and name might be ready, but it's personal. It's somebody is actually pleased that you're there, looks you in the eye. Do you want a drink? Can I make you comfortable? Then when you get to the table, the service is personal. It doesn't have to be over the top. And then try to get me what I want, or try to get my party what they want. And then it's just, if you can avoid saying no at any point, that's the instructions the entire crew has. So if somebody doesn't like mushrooms, or they want ketchup, or whatever it is that may not make me happy or make the chef happy. Like, as a matter of fact, there are items that I hate. I hate dill. I can't stand it. But that doesn't mean that the chef doesn't make specials with dill in it. So it's not about my personal taste. It's about your personal taste. It's about what you want. And then it's about the servers kind of enabling and getting you what it is that you need and want. So that is, and then also we let the servers be themselves, right? So the servers are allowed to have their own personalities. I also am a little weird and sometimes a little scared of when I go into a restaurant and they're all kind of like the same person. They're all, they're all pigeonholed, or they're told to operate or be a certain way. I kind of like servers that have their own personalities, but kind of color within the lines, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so not only do you have tons of repeat customers who have been so loyal for so many years, but also a lot of celebrity customers, like you mentioned, and anyone who's been to Craig's has certainly seen the paparazzi outside the doors waiting. And so even seeing Kylie Jenner last week posting at your restaurant. So I'm wondering, what does it feel like to take care of such famous clients, and does that differ from a typical client? And just anything along those lines.
Well, I look, for any of you that are going into the restaurant business, I think you want to build a business that's based on regulars. So my job is basically to collect regulars. Some people eat there 3 nights a week, 2 nights a week, 1 night a week, once every other week, once a month. There's all different kinds of regulars. The celebrities get a lot of the attention, but as a percentage of overall diners, they're really not that many. And so for me, what I'm trying to give the celebrity clientele a regular dining experience, because they're on most of the time everywhere else. And you want the dining experience to be someplace where they can let their guard down, be with their friends, and just kind of hang out. Whereas with the regular clientele, you're trying to treat them and give them that special moment. And then the other thing is just trying to make it a normal environment, even though there are some abnormal things that go on, like the paparazzi out front. Look, if somebody wants to come in and out and they want to come in and out privately, I can get you in and out privately. If you don't want a picture taken, there are plenty of people that come into that restaurant that those pictures would be worth a lot of money, and there aren't any. And then there's people that enjoy it, and it's part of who they are and what they do. And I'm Switzerland on it. Like, if however you want to do it. The goal is to take care of people and give people what they want in the manner in which they want it.
Right, absolutely. And I've seen a couple of questions in the chat so far about pivoting during COVID. So that's kind of what I want to get into now. Obviously, last March, life completely changed as we knew it. And so would love to hear kind of what it was like for you in those first few weeks once restaurants in California and really all over the country were forced to shut down, and kind of what your thought process was as a restaurant owner and a leader of such a large team. Yeah,
let me just get in here a little bit. So COVID really changed everything. In that, we didn't know what was happening, and we didn't know how long it was gonna take place. Like, I don't think, if you remember back, I think it was like a 2-week or a 3-week stay-at-home order, and so you're used to a certain amount of revenue coming in every night. Well, just because the revenue's not coming in doesn't mean the bills stop, right? You got rent, legal, insurance, labor, food costs. Everybody's freaking out. Nobody knows what this disease is doing to people. We're just seeing people die. Nobody has any answers. So my job as the leader is to just like take a breath, keep everybody calm, and just start to kind of figure out what it is we're going to do. So one of the biggest decisions early on was that restaurants were essential places of business, because they didn't want to cut off people's food supplies. So we pivoted from going, I would say probably 7 or 8% of our business was to go to 100%. So that doesn't sound like a lot when you say it, but now you're talking about boxes, bags, utensils, food to go containers. How do you take that many orders? And then for the kitchen, it's a whole new way of doing business. So in other words, if you come in to eat, your dining experience is an hour and a half to 2 hours. So the appetizer comes out, then the salad comes out, then the entree comes out, then the dessert comes out. All that happens over an hour and a half period of time from 7 different areas of the kitchen. Well, now you're packing food to go that has all of those elements in a bag, but they all have to come out at the same time. So now every section of the restaurant has to work together in concert. And think how many different variations there are to salads, to entrees, to appetizers, salt, pepper, sauce, Parmesan cheese on the side, dressing on the side, because you don't want the dressing on the salads because they'll get wilted. What travels, what doesn't travel. French fries get soggy, oysters don't travel. All of a sudden you're modifying your menu based on what's going to go. So that happened. Servers don't know whether or not to come in or not. They're not very good at packing bags to go. So we kind of pivot to that. We're doing that okay, but I don't know. I mean, not many people realize or didn't know beforehand, but food to go is not exactly the most profitable end of the business, right? So if in general you've got 30% food costs and you've got 30% labor costs and 20% general administration costs, meaning rent, air conditioning, lawyers, insurance, that leaves about 80, that leaves you about 20%. Okay. If Postmates, Grubhub, and DoorDash are taking 25 to 30%, every order is costing you 10%. So you have to kind of weigh that out with, are the employees still employed? Does everybody still have a job? Is it a service for the community? Are they actually, you know, it's the one normal thing that's happening in their life. And then, you know, there are a lot of our clients that were coming and picking it up themselves, so they weren't getting it to go. So we were able to kind of hang on, but you're losing money every month. I mean, one of the busiest months we ever had to go was probably, I think, April, and we lost 6 figures. So you're just like, okay, I can do this for a little bit. We've been open for 9 years. We've been really successful. This is our time to just kind of take it on the chin, and we'll just kind of roll with it. But you're like, whoa, how long can you just roll with it? Because the expenses haven't stopped, right? So your income stops a lot, but your expenses haven't stopped at all. And that's where a lot of restaurants were having trouble trying to figure out, what's the point of working so hard and doing this if we're not making any money? But I'm a big believer that if you don't stay in business and you don't keep your name out there, people will forget. And also, I do think it was a really big service for a lot of people. We were all scared. We were all not sure what was going on. And to have something that felt normal in your life, which was your favorite thing from Craig's, was a really big deal to a lot of people. And we were hearing that from the customers. And then the powers that be opened back up in June for, I think, 10 days. So then we had to like flip the switch and open back up. And then we built an outdoor patio in the back. So there was a back, I think there was 8 or 10 tandem spots in the back, and we built a patio out back. So then we were doing food to go in the restaurant. I think it was like 30%. So we were doing food to go, we were doing 30% in the restaurant, and we had a back patio. We've never had a back patio. We've never served food outside. We have no infrastructure to serve food outside. So, and also the food's going another, doesn't sound like it much, but it's going another 100 yards from the kitchen. And it's not all in front of you inside the restaurant. So we're all learning as we go. We're all learning new jobs. We're all learning new ways of doing things. Oh, and then they shut the indoor back down. So we have only outdoor dining and to go. Then we make the outdoor patio a little bit bigger. And then we make it a little bit bigger because it's the only thing that's keeping us alive. And then they shut down, what is it? They shut down outdoor dining Thanksgiving. So in LA, they shut down outdoor dining again in Thanksgiving, and it didn't open again until the end of January. So it was just kind of this herky-jerky kind of, there's cash flow, there's no cash flow, keeping everybody employed, everybody's scared. And then you got to throw in all the legal bills of, if somebody didn't feel good, I needed to keep them from coming in the restaurant. So we had to pay them to stay home. And then if somebody didn't feel good, they went and got a COVID test, I paid for it. Because I didn't want anybody saying that they were going to come to work because they couldn't afford not to. And I also didn't want anybody not getting a test because they couldn't afford it or was afraid it was going to cost them money. So it's a really kind of delicate fine line between getting people to be honest for the good of the whole, but you have to make it worth their while too. So, but you add all those expenses up. I think we spent between the outdoor patio, COVID testing, extra salary, I was like $250,000 over the last 11 months. But it's been worth it. I mean, you know, we're kind of back. People are out and about, and the crew has stayed together, and that's COVID. I mean, I can go on a whole rant about how California handled COVID, but I don't think you really want to hear that.
Yeah, I heard some of the rant in the Joe Rogan podcast. But you mentioned
Joe tried to take me in. He tried to get me to like swing at I wasn't swinging. because I just like everybody's blasting the politicians, and I'm like, I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're trying to do the right thing. I don't necessarily agree with what they did, but I think that they had everybody's best interest at heart. Let's put it that way.
Right, right, absolutely. And you mentioned doing the to go and delivery and building the patio and maybe even putting tables out front and really just trying to do whatever you can to bring customers in. And at least from what I've seen, the local community is responding to that. So would love to hear more about what it means to you for such loyal customers of Greg's to continue ordering to go delivery and doing whatever they can to support you throughout the past several months.
No, it's funny. Like everybody always says LA is such a horrible town and it's this and it's that. And there's no community in LA. And I'm living proof that there is a community in LA. Our clients, our customers were amazing. And I mean, I think we did 8 or 9 Netflix events. We did virtual events with some of our corporate clients where they would launch a movie and they would invite 50 or 100 people to have dinner, and we would make a beautiful box and hand deliver it to certain addresses. And I mean, so we were still doing events, they were just different. And we had to learn we'd never done an event box. We had never learned how to brand it or what should go in it or what travels well or delivering it at 2 p.m. with heating instructions. And you're talking about a high profile clientele. You've also got to make it simple enough for them to do and good enough for a company like Netflix or Warner Brothers or something like that to be associated with. So, I mean, we hit a lot of curveballs. And the state and the county were always throwing them at us. The tables could be 6 feet apart. They needed partitions. You needed QR codes on the table instead of menus. Well, what's a QR code? Like nobody knew what a QR code was 11 months ago. Now it's like standard. Now seeing somebody with a paper menu in their hand kind of looks funny. So it's just like everybody was really adaptable, and the clientele were amazingly popular with the amount of food to go and really supportive. And like I said, I think part of it was they wanted to support us, and part of it was it was kind of the one normal thing that happened in their day that everybody's days were incredibly difficult.
Right, and we have a question from Dan Kowalski in the chat, and he says, I would like to know if Craig sees the restaurant world returning to what things were like pre-COVID once vaccinations and herd immunity takes hold, or will it be modified? And if so, how do you see the industry changing?
It's interesting because it was kind of going through a little bit of a transformation. It was going to fast casual, and I don't know where everybody is in the chats, but there were a lot of restaurants in LA that were opening up that had no front of house staff. Where you go up to the counter, you'd order, and somebody would just run it out to the table, and they were basically eliminating, I don't know, 40% of the labor costs. And it's an interesting, like, philosophically, it's interesting because do people still want fine dining experience from the time you walk in to a drink, to a cocktail, to bread, to being really looked after, or are they just looking for good food and they want to get in and out quickly and they want it cheaper, right? I would say that the whole world was moving towards fast casual and away from, finer dining. But I have a feeling COVID might have changed that a little bit, because I think what we've all kind of realized is we need the social interaction. We need to see each other. What I missed the most about the restaurant business, or at least when we were closed, was when you're in the middle of a busy dining room and you close your eyes and you feel that energy and you feel that hum. That's what I missed the most. And we're starting to feel that again on the patios. And I think you can see the joy on people's faces as they're coming out. And I don't care what age they are, young, middle-aged, older. They're excited to be out. They're excited to see their friends. They just want to go out and party. And everybody keeps talking about the roaring 20s kind of happening again. And it's weird that it's like the 20s. It's exactly 100 years. So I actually think that the restaurant business will probably come back strong. I think the nightclubs will come back even stronger. I think people are going to want to get out and for lack of a better word, get pretty stupid. And I think people are going to be celebrating and having a good time. I mean, we're just getting a sense of it, a vibe of it. I mean, people are ordering bigger wines and ordering more food and not so price conscious. That being said, we didn't really raise our prices during COVID. But I'm kind of curious to see where the future of the restaurant business is. I still think that there will be a portion that'll be fast casual. But I definitely think restaurants like ours are, I used to say probably a year and a half ago, for every 10 restaurants like mine, probably 2 or 3 will exist. But I'd say maybe it'll be a little bit more. I think people want that experience.
Right. And kind of moving on, we have a question also in the chat from Sebastian, who says, hey, Craig, thank you so much for coming today to speak. What are some crucial pieces of advice you'd have for someone opening up a restaurant or a nightlife concept in LA?
Let's see. Know your clientele. Have enough capital, because you're probably going to run short. Generally, what happens in LA, especially, is everybody loves to give it a chance in the first 3 or 4 months, and everybody wants to say, "Oh my God, I went there. It was great. It was horrible. Whatever." You know what I mean? So you get this huge wave in the beginning, and then you kind of like come down to reality, and then you either find your core regulars or you don't. And so that's when you're going to need the capital. What I didn't realize is all the hidden and ancillary costs that people don't really get. I mean, let's just say I'll give you a perfect example. Our ELPI insurance that protects the corporation from lawsuits. It was $42,000 last year. By the way, we have no cases against us. So it's not 42 grand because we've been irresponsible. It's 42 grand. It's 62 this year. So, I mean, that's $5,000 a month. So you just, to me, I just amortize it to the rent. So you've got rent, you've got insurance, you've got slip and fall insurance, you've got workers' comp, you've got labor rates are going through the roof. We're now at what, $14 or $15 an hour. And in California, that's even for tip servers. So my servers are making anywhere between $30 and $50 an hour, and we're still a part of the $15 an hour crew. So labor rates are going higher, food costs are going higher. And then it's just all the hidden little, I mean, the permits, the fees, getting an ABC license, right now is probably easier right now, but it might be difficult when everybody starts to reopen in 6 or 8 months. I don't know. I think I bought my ABC license for $65,000. I'm not sure what they're going for right now. So and then it's just design, plumbing, electrical. It's a lot of hidden costs. But after saying all of that, if you love the business and it's what you really do and you're passionate about it and you're a people person, there's no business like it. You know what I mean? So don't ever let anybody tell you not to do it. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't succeed. You can. You just have to have the passion and the perseverance. I mean, there are so many times I wanted to say, why am I keeping it open the last year? What's the point? Like, it's too hard. We're doing this and we're not making any money. But you just have to see it through, because what else am I going to do? This is what I do. I mean, I can't imagine doing anything else with my life. So if you've got a vision and you've got something, go for it. Don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. And there's people out there like me that are more than willing to help with advice. I mean, most of us in the restaurant business, that's the other good thing about COVID is we've all kind of gotten together. There's a text chain where there's 30 or 40 of us on a text chain where we're all just kind of keeping it up on the latest politics or the latest rule decisions or the latest changes. And we've all kind of come together. We're all kind of helping each other. which is really, really kind of nice. Everybody thinks everybody's like, it's cutthroat and everybody's competing. You can't eat at the same restaurant every night, and you can't go to the same club every night. So we all kind of work together.
Right. Yeah. I love that advice. And so we have a couple of questions in the chat about your marketing strategy. So I'll read two of them because they're somewhat similar. Heba would like to know more about your marketing strategy and what you did to help your business grow. And then Ivan asks, in terms of data gathering and data analytics, are there any is there any specific data that you're collecting about the restaurant, and what are your pains as a restaurant owner in terms of marketing and analytics?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I come from a school where everything was on paper. There was no open table. There was no resis. There was nothing was available online. Everything was kind of in my head, and or on the phone. Uh, as like I remember getting my first BlackBerry, and I was like, oh my God, I can keep everybody's information in there. Like I didn't like that was so different. So marketing is really interesting. My strategy was to make sure that it was individual. Every diner was made happy. And I thought that every successful dinner would get me 5 to 10 to 20 other new guests, because the most powerful marketing is word of mouth. And so that's why I'm kind of happy that I had a smaller restaurant. It only seats 95. And so I was pretty clued into we're all equal, but when it comes to gathering other people into your restaurant, we're not all equal. Feet follow feet, and certain people, if you know that a certain person eats at a place, you want to try it, or you might go there, or you may hear that that's their regular place. And Boston is probably the same way. New York is the same way. I know Chicago is the same way. So I was pretty calculated in when somebody would come in that I knew I wanted them to be a regular. I made sure that they had a good time and they had access. So my marketing strategy really was, for lack of a better term, simplistic. It was individual. I made sure each one had a great time. And then as we started gathering data, it's interesting because a lot of our regulars really aren't even in the business. So it's not so much as a Hollywood clientele, it's an eating out clientele, if that makes any sense. So all the support people around Hollywood, all the agents, lawyers, business managers, they all eat out on a regular basis. So those are the people that you're kind of getting access to. And you want the people that are eating out multiple times a week. So as I started to learn who those people were, that's who got more access. And then I started playing with Instagram. I am 56. I don't quite get all of it. Like I really, really don't. But here, so sorry, I keep moving around to kind of avoid a little bit of the sun. So it's interesting. I've been getting some pretty good lessons from, and as you know, there are some pretty significant influencers that come into the restaurant, and they keep giving me tips about angles and filters and what kind of grabs people's attention. And I what I really focus on, if you watch or you follow I do Craig's LA, because I think the one thing that was called out to me early on was people respond to authentic. And if you now that you've talked to me and you go look back at our Instagram, you'll hear me. It used to be a little snarkier. It used to be a little funnier. Now today you don't want to run afoul of anything too much, so you try not to get too far out there. But I generally concentrate on the food and or an experience that's happening. Craig's Vegan is run by a young lady that has a different sensibility, and I let her run with that. So it's two very different tones. So as far as marketing goes, there's the online marketing, and then there's what I call the grassroots marketing, which is basically making sure that people have a great time in that old world hospitality where it's really personal. I know everything about their lives. I know about their kids. I know about their jobs. I know who's having a baby, who's getting divorced. I know everything about them. So when people come in, it's significant, if that makes any sense.
Right.
By the way, I just got on TikTok. So, so all these guys, there's these guys that come in, and I swear to God, I wouldn't have known them if I tripped over them. But apparently they're really popular on TikTok, and they've been giving me lessons. So that's a whole other like medium that I don't really know anything about. But we've slowly started to kind of play with it. I don't quite get why so many people are so popular on TikTok, but there you go.
Right. I really like your point about authenticity, and I think it's important that so many of us remember that. We have another question in the chat from Drag, and he says, for someone who's had a dream of opening a spot, do you think now is the right time to pursue that? Or do you think someone interested in doing so should wait a few more months?
No, I would definitely start lining up your ducks. Now is the time where people are going to want to make a deal. Rents are probably pretty cheap. People, anytime there's any disruption in the economy or the world or anything is when you want to kind of make your move. I remember I opened up Craig's in the middle, let's see, it was 2010, in the middle of, a really bad economic cycle. And I got a great rent. I remember the bank owned the kitchen. So the guy that was renting me the place said to me, I just have to make a deal with the bank. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, the previous guys had taken out a $1.6 million loan to build out this beautiful kitchen, and they owe $285,000 and the bank wants it. I said, well, let me see if I can make a deal with them, because I didn't want that hanging over our heads. So I went to the bank and I offered them 40 grand. And they told me to go F myself. And I told them to come pick it up. And they said, what do you mean? I said, come get it. They go, what do you mean? I go, come get the whole kitchen. Like the stoves, the ovens, just come get it. Oh, by the way, when you come and get it, you're going to have to break the wall down because it's not going to fit through the door. But if you don't want to sell it to me for 40 grand, come and get it. And we eventually settled on $65,000 because we were in a bad economic time and the bank didn't want it on their books. So there's probably a lot of places for rent. There's probably a lot of equipment available, and there's unemployment's kind of high. People are looking for gigs. So you know what? Don't wait for the right time, because there isn't a right time.
Right, absolutely. And we have another question in the chat from Alex, and he says, thank you so much for being here, Craig. If you had to pick one factor that's contributed most to your success, what would it be? Menu, location, network, atmosphere, etc.
I think kind of all of it, but I would say perseverance and my ability to be flexible. I don't think, I do remember, and this is important for anybody that's opening up a restaurant or a club, you're going to have a very specific image in your head of what you want it to be. But I remember in the early days, 6-7 months into the restaurant, I remember it didn't quite feel right. And as we adjusted a few menu items and we adjusted a few of the employees that were there, and I think we switched out chefs 9 months in. I remember in October of that year, so we opened up January 12th. I remember October of that year walking through the restaurant and thinking to myself, okay, this is what you're going to be. Like, it found itself. And only because I gave it the room to kind of find itself. In other words, I was flexible enough to give it, I just kind of let it happen. And so allow your business to find its own sense of identity, if that makes any sense. You're not going to nail it perfectly out the gate. It just doesn't happen.
Right. Absolutely. And we have a question from Max, who says, with thousands of restaurants closing down due to COVID, do you believe that many of them will be able to come back, or do you actually think that COVID has discouraged a lot of restaurant and hospitality owners from leaving the industry.
Yeah, it's a really hard industry from the get-go. Like I mentioned earlier, I think what is it, 5% make it through the first year. I mean, I think we will come back. I think a lot of people closed their doors because they just thought, like I did at some point, like it's not worth it. Like it's too hard. But it's in their blood. Like what else are they going to do? It's what they love. So I think people will come back. I think concepts will be reimagined. I think our tastes are changing. I mean, we didn't have a vegan section of the menu. Now that makes up 20% of our sales. So if you're not constantly like innovating and listening to clients and changing and adapting, you end up kind of getting removed anyway. And I think this is going to give people an opportunity to kind of rethink what they want to do, if that makes any sense. I definitely think a lot of it will be coming back. I think some cities will be slower than others. I mean, I think the rents in New York, I mean, you just can't pay $80,000, $100,000 in rent and have a successful business. It's just not, it's not going to work at a certain point. But maybe that'll help others get into the business that were thinking about they couldn't do it. You know, I don't know.
And so we only have a couple minutes left. So I want to ask, what does the future look like for you? I remember hearing on the Joe Rogan podcast, you said for the first time you were interested in potentially opening up another location somewhere else. Is that still the plan? And what do you think the next few years look like for you?
Yeah, so I you know, it's funny, before COVID, I don't think I would have considered another restaurant. California can be a little bit of a difficult place to do business. And then, you know, all of our best laid plans got completely shaken up. So I think, would I be open to other locations? Yes. There are other cities that are intriguing as far as maybe opening up another Craig's. And then, you know, we started this vegan ice cream line 6 years ago. It really started about 1.5 years ago, growing. We're in 7 or 8 major supermarkets in California. We're at Fatburger as the base of their milkshake. We're rolling into Johnny Rockets on April 1st. That's 170 stores. And we open up a scoop shop in Vegas at the Resorts World, which is a new hotel that's opening up in June. And now we've hired like national salespeople. So I think I want to kind of see where this goes. Non-dairy ice creams are the fastest growing segment in the entire industry. And I'm curious to see if we can leverage the brand. I mean, the world didn't need another tomato sauce. And everybody's like, why did you do vegan ice cream? I'm like, well, first of all, it's good. Secondly, it's the fastest growing segment in the industry. And third was the world didn't need another tomato sauce. So, you know, what's interesting, what's fun. And so I think that's what the future is. The future is probably us growing Craig's Vegan, maybe some other products, cookies, sandwiches, ice cream sandwiches, maybe even a vegan meat sauce. And then being open to other locations in other cities, something that I probably wouldn't have been 2 years ago. But COVID has definitely opened up my world to, I don't know, exploring whatever opportunities might come about. Why not?
Right. And so I wanna end the evening by saying that I'm sure for those who haven't visited Craig's yet, everyone on this call, the next time they're in LA will most certainly do that now. And so would love to know what someone on this call can do to get a reservation at Craig's, and more importantly, what you think they should order when they visit.
Oh God. Well, first of all, I guess maybe when you call the restaurant, if they tell you no, maybe leave your name and number and tell them you were on this Zoom, see what I can do. Or always take the early and the late. And then we also started doing brunch on Saturdays and Sundays. So, and it's really kind of fun. It's something that I never would have considered doing. And it's been really interesting, and it's a totally different menu. So talk about hitting another curveball, talk about being inventive and fun and kind of embracing the challenge. What would I have? I think the menu is kind of made up of all of my favorite things, so it's difficult. The filet with the blue cheese ravioli is a really interesting dish. It's a dish I once had up in the Highlands Inn up in Big Sur. And it was always in my brain. Like if I ever opened up my own joint, I'm going to have a dish like that. The chicken parm is great. The honey truffle chicken is really, really good. It depends on what you're in the mood for. I mean, we make great pizzas, great ahi tuna tartare. Like I said, some of the vegan stuff is my favorite stuff. The vegan chicken parmesan and the spaghetti squash. I think what is also so gratifying is that such a diverse clientele and such a diverse menu seems to kind of hit the spot for so many people. And I think I alluded to it before. For me, the most gratifying part of it is people come to Craig's to celebrate and they come to commiserate. And if you can accomplish both in the same spot, then you've got a pretty special place.
Right. Awesome. I love that advice. And I think that's a great place to end. And just want to say thank you again so much for accepting my invitation to come speak and spending this hour with us. I know that you now have a ton more fans who will most certainly come and visit. And also thank you to everyone who's been on this call for the past hour. I know it's tough on a Monday night in the middle of midterms, but we really appreciate it. And once again, can't thank you enough for being here.
Everybody, thank you. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I know it's a really difficult time. And all I can say is, if you can dream it, you can make it happen.
Awesome. It's a great place to end. Thank you again, and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate your answers.
Bye.